myself Aditya P. Tripathi. I'm here to start a new topic, which is very interesting, and it is of paramount importance. It is a widely discussed and a very interesting topic, that is financial shenanigans. You must have heard of window dressing, you must have heard of creative accounting, you must have heard of aggressive accounting, and you must have also heard about financial shenanigans. So if we club them together, we call it financial shenanigans. It comprises of so many things. It talks about window dressing, it talks about creative accounting, it talks about aggressive accounting. So in today's lecture, I am going to tell you about what is financial shenanigan, what exactly we mean by the term financial shenanigans. Why do we call them shenanigans? That also I'll tell you. And then I'll be telling you about why do they exist, what are the motivations and opportunities for it. Is it possible to resort to shenanigans? And if it is so, what is the motivation behind it? Why does our accountants run after this kind of scenario? Why do they resort to this shenanigans? I'll be further telling you about what is the idea of Howard M. Schilitz on 7 shenanigans. He has actually classified 7 shenanigans, roughly 11 years back. In 2010, he came up with a book. And he talked about the 7 shenanigans. That also I'll be telling you, and eventually we'll talk about techniques of financial shenanigans. This is what is the broad agenda of this topic in part 1 of financial shenanigans. So first of all, let me tell you what is the background. You must have heard of so many scams, corporate frauds, which is coming in front of us. If we talk about Indian scenario, it started from the capital market fraud of Harshad Mehta scam, you must have heard of, then Ketan Parekh scam. And eventually we, if we talk about the biggest fraud in terms of, size, you can, take name of, Satyam Computers Limited, which was also, one of the most popular, name in this corridors of financial scams and frauds. We also talk about Kingfisher Airlines, although people call it as, they relate it to the person called Malia, but it is of Kingfisher Airlines. Then we have the case of Jet Airways and ILFS, then we have DHFL, and we have Cafe Coffee Day. So there are a number of scams, PMC Bank, Yes Bank, PNB. So you must be thinking why these frauds are occurring when we talk about, when we boast upon the regulatory framework, the kind of system we have. And we have all the checks and balances, we have auditors, we have agents, different agencies to take care of all these regulations. Still, why do we come across such kind of scenario where the scams or frauds are coming to us? And it is not only in our country. If we talk about the other countries, if you look at the scenario of the biggest country in terms of economic superpower, that is United States of America, there also you will find number of frauds. If you must have heard of Enron. So if we talk about the scams and frauds, it is a topic of intense debate. It is a topic on which we very often discuss as a person of accounting and finance. We try to draw the inferences in emerging economies like India, that what exactly is going on. Although if we talk about the global financial crisis of 2008, then too India was still staying unaffected, or you can say partially affected, because we were not very much exposed to CDOs, that is called collateral debt obligations, which was there at that point of time. If we assign the reason to that global financial crisis of 2008. So my dear students, I would like to tell you in the background that these scams, financial frauds, they were, they are, and they will always be a topic of intense debate, discussion, and deliberation. But the question comes, what kind of frauds we are actually facing? And here I'll actually be focusing upon the financial frauds only. I will not talk about the capital market frauds. I'll tell you about the financial frauds which are occurring. Over 50,000 frauds they had actually hit banks in Indian scenario, if we take up the time horizon of financial year 2009 to 2019. So in a time span of 10 years, we are finding approximately more than 50,000 frauds, and that too in the banking sector. So RBI itself, the Reserve Bank of India, in 2019, in one of its report, it has affirmed that bank frauds worth 2.05 trillion rupees had happened in last 11 years in our country. You can examine, you can just imagine the size, 2.05 trillion rupees. And the gravity of the fact is that what we have created in a time span of more than 70 years since independence, whatever we have created in a total time span of 70 years, almost 75% of that we have lost in bank frauds only. So don't you think that it's a topic of great importance for policymakers, for accountants, and even for the general public, that whatever we have created in time span of 70 years, can we afford to leave it to these kind of frauds, to these kind of shenanigans? Answer is obviously no. And you must have been observing the kind of the stringent policy we are witnessing as of now. And the government has also taken this into cognizance that yes, we cannot afford to waste the hard-earned money of general public, because government is actually running with the capital, with the money of taxpayers only. So it is the taxpayer, it is me and you who have actually contributed to the government funding. So government has rightly and timely taken it into consideration that we cannot afford to this kind of scenario where 75% of what we have earned in a time span of 70 years is going to waste in the name of bank frauds only. And most of, if you look at the scenario, if this has been happening for long, what was the remedy, what was the solution? Most of our professional institutions, regulators, and even academia, if I take academia also into consideration, they were busy in a kind of activity which I would name as post-mortem. Once the fraud has happened, the fraud has been unearthed, it has come to the light, people started doing a post-mortem of it. But the irony is that, were we waiting for this kind of fraud to happen? Answer is, it should not happen. We should not wait for such kind of frauds to come to the light and then we simply have our sympathy with the public, with the general public, with the authorities. Rather, we should try to arrest them in advance, or you can say we should try to identify that this kind of fraud may happen, and well in advance we need to take corrective actions. So most of the stakeholders, what they were doing earlier, they were actually behaving or performing the post-mortem of such shenanigans. And remember, it includes aggressive accounting, it includes creative accounting, it includes window dressing, and it includes accounting frauds as well. If you ask me in general terms, what exactly we mean by the shenanigan, I would say it's a kind of financial mischief. Just like a kid, playing in your home, he or she may, do something which is not expected from her, or he or she may spoil something, and depending upon their IQ or EQ, depending upon their intelligent quotient, the magnitude of loss is very high. It changes. So if a child is very creative, very aggressive, then obviously he or she will behave like that. So depending upon the IQ that child have, the magnitude of mischief will be according to that. So we have to understand here, our accountants, what if our accountants, those who are well versed into the field of accounting, those who are very much aware of the rules and regulations of accounting, what if they start playing game? What if they start doing something negative? They start making use of their knowledge for some negative purposes. What if they get aggressive? Accountant is not supposed to get aggressive. And creativity, when we say here, creativity is in negative terms. You are supposed to be creative in order to bring transparency into the system, in order to improvise the financial reporting. But what if your accountant is going to get aggressive and showing his creativity in terms of negative aspect or negative reporting? What will happen? Obviously the situation is going to be very unfortunate, I would say. Or I would say it is really very worrisome for the policymakers, for the regulators, for the government agencies, that how to keep a track of it, how to control it, how to check it. That is very important. So first of all, let me tell you what is shenanigan. So in the background, I told you what can happen, what may be the outcome if your accountant has is bent upon playing with the rules and regulations. So despite the strong regulatory framework and standards, what we call as the accounting standards, there have been an increasing number of cases of creative accounting and accounting frauds. So we admit that we have strong regulatory framework, we have all standards in place, but still the number of cases of creative accounting or accounting frauds, they have increased. over a period of time. And what is the outcome? It is actually leading to massive losses to the investors and other stakeholders. So investors who are actually putting their hard-earned money into the corporate setup, what about their capital? A company may easily go for insolvency. Company may say that we are insolvent now, we are going into the winding up process. But what about the shareholder? What about the common man who has contributed his hard-earned money for for the sake of that investment in a company, and he or she is willing to make money out of it? Some people say that yes, capital market, it is under the E category of risk, and obviously you will have to bear risk if you are entering into the capital market. Yes, agreed. But the loss can be due to the factor of due to the market forces. What if there is some individual who is working behind it? Am I supposed to bear that loss? Answer is no. So it may lead to massive losses to the investors and other stakeholders, and that is why in management accounting we always keep an eye on this, and we always discuss about financial shenanigans, what can be the opportunities, what can be the motives, and what are the ways to curb it, what are the ways to control it. That is what is what should be our point of discussion when we talk about shenanigans. Some people say we should not talk about frauds. But I personally feel that we should talk about frauds. We should rather discuss, deliberate, and try to find out all possible reasons which are responsible for such kind of scenario, so that it should not be repeated. Once a case of Yes Bank came to the fore, it should not be repeated in case of any other bank. If there is a problem with ILFS, it should not be repeated again. If there is a problem with PNB and that was there, which was actually identified, then obviously in future it should not be repeated. So the question comes, what are shenanigans? Shenanigans are basically actions or omissions. Remember, it can be an action or it can be an omission, which is designed to hide or distort the real financial performance or financial position of a company. So there are two things. First is there is an action or there is an omission. If it is there, you cannot say that it is a shenanigan. In order for any action to be called as shenanigan, we have to understand it will qualify to be called as shenanigan in two situations. One, when this action or omission is designed to hide or distort. The intention is very important. When you are doing it with an intention to hide or distort the real financial performance. Now remember, when I am saying hide or distort, it can be either way. Either you are inflating the financial performance of a company, either you are showing greater amount of profit than what actually you are earning, or you are going in a negative way. Whatever loss you have, you are showing greater amount of losses. So you are either hiding or distorting the real financial performance of the company or the financial condition of the company. So either you are playing with the figures of profit and loss account or the balance sheet. Because profit and loss account is telling us about the financial performance of the company, whereas the balance sheet is talking about financial condition of a company. So we have to understand what is shenanigan. Shenanigans are actions or omissions designed to hide or distort the real financial position and performance of the company. And remember, they include all ways. They include aggressive accounting, they include creative accounting, they include window dressing, and obviously the accounting frauds. But remember, the intention should be identified. Whatever they are doing, either it is aggressive or creative or window dressing, if the intention is to create a wrong impression about the financial performance of the company, then obviously it will be called as, it qualifies to be called as what? Shenanigans. So we have to understand, my dear learners, that if you say aggressive accounting, if you say creative accounting, sometimes you get confused. Sir, is it window dressing? Do you think that window dressing should be part of shenanigans? Aggressive accounting, should it be part of shenanigans? Answer is yes, because these are the ways, either you are getting aggressive or you are making negative use of your creativity, or you are going for window dressing. Whatever you are doing, your objective is to create a wrong impression about the financial performance of the enterprise. It can be a company, it can be any business enterprise where you do so. Now the basic idea of window dressing is what? What is the idea behind window dressing? The idea is to mislead shareholders and investors by presenting a favorable picture of the organization's performance. It is just like, somebody coming to your home and your home is not in order, so you are just trying to somehow clean the drawing room area, and you are forcing the person to stay there only, to confine himself or herself to that area only. You don't want your guest to enter inside the other rooms. What is the reason? Because you have dressed up that area, you have created an artificial area where you are trying to show that everything is very goody, everything is very good. So in a company setup, when we are doing so, we call it window dressing. So your window is properly dressed, you are creating a window which is dressed up to show the favorable picture of the organization's performance, but the ground reality is entirely different to what you are showing. And the moment it is so, we call it to be a financial shenanigans. Now the second question comes after knowing about shenanigans. Why do shenanigans exist? What is the need of it? What is the reason behind having these shenanigans into our accounting setup? There should not be any place to shenanigans, because we are doing our accounting, we are following all standards, there is an auditor who is taking care of all the checks and balances. Still, how can it be possible? Why do shenanigans exist? Answer is, it pays to do it. There is a greed factor. The person who is doing so, there must be some greed, there must be some benefit out of it. That is why a person will do so. So we'll have to identify what are those benefits for which a person is resorting to these kind of ways. So why do shenanigans exist? First and foremost reason can be, it pays to do it, because it is paying, and the person is willing to make benefit out of it. It may boost performance related bonuses also. There might be a possibility that by doing so, the performance related bonuses may increase. Suppose, what if my salary is linked to my salary is linked to the financial performance of my company, my bonus is linked to the financial performance of the company, then obviously I may think of, I may go for thinking or resorting to this way if I am under tremendous pressure of enjoying that bonus. So it may boost performance related bonuses. Third reason can be, it may prevent negative outcomes. There is a fear factor also. If you ask me why do shenanigans exist, I would say there are only two reasons. One is greed, another is fear. Greed and fear, these two factors are very important. Either a person is doing something wrong out of his greedy nature, or out of fear. There can be a negative outcome. What if your boss has given you a target of making good amount of profit, or showing the positive financial performance of the company? So the person may fear of losing job. So there can be a fear factor also, cause of which a person may resort to shenanigans. It may help company obtain financing. Suppose your company is going to general public for issuing shares or debentures, or you are going to your banker for taking loan. So this shenanigan may also help the company or the enterprise in obtaining the finances, the loans. You want to take loan, your credibility is based upon your liquidity position, your financial soundness, and obviously in that case a person may resort to shenanigans. It may dispel negative market perception. There can be, suppose there was a negative market perception about the company and you wanted to dispel it, you wanted to eliminate it, then obviously you may resort to shenanigans. It may help companies functioning financing covenants. There are certain requirements, certain covenants which are supposed to be there, and for that you are resorting to shenanigans. See, whatever points I am discussing here, it is based upon the cases of shenanigans. When you go through hundred of cases where the financial frauds were there, or where there was window dressing, where there was aggressive accounting or creative accounting was identified and the action was taken. See, action is also taken. Severe action is, there is a punishment also to the person who is resorting to these ways. But remember, based on those cases, these are the reasons which are identified, that due to these reasons these shenanigans exist. But two most prominent factors were greed and fear. Either a person is resorting to this negative way out of greed or out of fear. Now, what type of companies are most likely to use shenanigans? This actually amounts into some kind of blame game. See, it can be, before I tell you about the type of companies which are more vulnerable to this shenanigan, yes, I should accept here that we cannot say that it will happen in X kind of company or Y kind of company, and in other case of companies it will not happen. It is just like pandemic. You never know who is going to become victim of this pandemic of COVID-19. We never knew. So we could not say. Now, depending upon the immunity of the person, either the person was safe, or somehow even the person was into the trouble, then too somehow they survived. So companies with a weak control environment, it is just like immunity which we are maintaining with our body. Company need to have a strong control, strong internal control. So if the company is having weak internal control system, then obviously it is going to be vulnerable. It is there are greater chances of that company to be caught into the trap of shenanigans. So we have to understand that the companies with a weak control environment, they are more vulnerable. But when I say that they are more vulnerable, I am not denying to the possibility of this happening, this shenanigan in other companies. There is always a possibility. So that is why most of the companies, they have their own vigilance department. Why do they need such kind of department? Just because of this, that there should not be any untoward incident in terms of shenanigans or these kind of activities. Suppose if your company has no independent members, now there is a legislation behind it. Now companies are supposed to have independent auditors. So if all members are your employees, then obviously they are dependent. Under the relationship of employer and employee, there is always an undue influence. So those companies where no independent members are there is a greater possibility. They are most likely to use shenanigans. Lack of competent or independent auditors. If you are, the question comes how to identify the competency or the independency of the auditor. That is again a big question. Where to go? So lack of competent, auditor, that also matters. Because for auditors qualification, the Companies Act 2013 has identified that this is a qualification of auditor. So whosoever is appointed is having that minimum qualification or having certificate of practice. But apart from that, the cases are showing that lack of competent auditors, that also make your company most likely to use shenanigans. Inadequate internal audit function. Apart from your the statutory audit, you are supposed to conduct concurrent audit as well on daily basis. So you should have your own internal audit function, and if it is not adequate, then obviously your company is most likely to use shenanigans. Now, what type of companies are most likely to use shenanigans? The list is very long, but we need to understand that the management facing extreme competitive pressure. Suppose if a company is under tremendous pressure of competition, or they are known or suspected of having questionable character, they can also be vulnerable to this kind of situation. Newly established public companies, there is a company which is new, it has tremendous pressure of performance, there is a performance pressure. So cause of that, that company itself may resort to these kind of shenanigans. Privately held companies, and there is a very popular term which is called as basket case companies. Now, what is this basket case company? These are those companies which are actually facing severe financial crisis, or they are not able to repay their debt. So these they are called, in the language of accounting and finance, we call them as basket case companies. These basket case companies, they are actually struggling a lot. They are struggling so much so that they resort to these kind of shenanigans. So there is a fear that we should not be, fear of losing out the company, fear of entering into the compulsory winding up. And cause of that, these basket case companies or privately held companies or newly established companies, they become more vulnerable to resort to these shenanigans. Now the question comes, what are the motivations? If I have to sum up, I would say performance based compensation is the first and foremost reason for any company or any accountant to resort to shenanigans. Second is earning expectations. Third is tax evasion. There can be a reason of tax evasion also, and cause of that the accountant may resort to shenanigans. There can be pressure for raising funds, or there can be a pressure for concealing companies' poor financial health when you are entering into the IPO or FPO, that is initial public offering or further public offerings. Or suppose if your company has gone for diversion of funds, that can also be the reason for this resorting to shenanigans. So I have roughly or briefly told you in this lecture what is financial shenanigans, what are the possible motivations for it. In the next lecture of mine, I'll tell you about the opportunities, that is, motivations are there, but are they able to do so? what are those opportunities, and then eventually I'll tell you about the different techniques of shenanigans. I hope you must have understood the basic concept behind financial shenanigans. With this, I'm ending today's lecture. Thank you so much.